You got to have a weapon retention, a way to retain your pistol. And that's something that's not emphasized nearly enough. The most flippant response to that you hear a lot from cops is, if someone grabs my gun, I'll just shoot them. No, you won't, bro. Because A, they're probably not going to just grab your gun and stand right in front of the muzzle, right? They're going to get the muzzle offline. Now they're punching you. Are you ready for that? How can you retain your gun then? And also, after a round goes off, and that round may even hit them, it's not going to stop them immediately. And then you're firing around God knows where, potentially endangering other people. And you know as well as I do, even a weak hold on a slide, after a round goes off,
it's open. You're done.
Don't be flippant. Don't say, I'll just shoot a guy off if he grabs your gun. Have some ways to get his hand off your gun, and that's important. That's part of being prepared.
You're listening to The Hot Wash by Born Primitive Tactical. I'm Bruno Fallon. I've spent my 4-decade career in some of the most elite units in the United States Special Operations community, where I learned that elite operators aren't made overnight. They're forged through hardship, discipline, and relentless drive. In each episode, I sit down with the most accomplished and innovative leaders in special operations, industry, coaching, and athletes of all disciplines. Let's jump right in. Everybody, welcome back to the Born Primitive Tactical Hot Wash podcast. We got a great guest here today. Got Rich Nance. We have never met, and we just caught up about 15, 20 minutes ago. He's got an amazing resume. Let me see if I don't butcher this. 25 years as a police officer, retired as a SWAT sergeant, big time into combatives, defensive techniques, things of that nature. You got a great book out that we're going to talk about, Gunfight. You've got a private business. You do a podcast yourself. So kind of a busy guy out there. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, no, there's a lot going on. I retired about 2.5 years ago, and I'm not very good at the retirement thing yet, but I'm working on it.
Understand that. Totally get that. Which department did you retire out of?
I worked for the Brentwood Police Department in Northern California for 25.5 years. I started with Phoenix Police Department, where I worked for about a year. And before that, I worked for Sheriff Joe Arpaio. You remember him in Arizona. Certainly with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. I worked in the jail for him. So I was handing out, pink boxers to the inmates and feeding them green bologna. But I made so little money. I made $10.36 an hour. So I was also eating the green bologna.
Green bologna as well, right?
Yeah.
No, I actually got to meet Sheriff Joe. We actually, in my last job, when I was running an urban training program, did quite a bit of work in Phoenix. And the Phoenix SWAT team is near and dear to my heart. As a matter of fact, they're wearing Born Primitive, so we really love them. But at what point in the 25-year mark did you start thinking, was it the drop? What was it that made you make the transition? Because I know the police world's changing greatly. So.
Yeah. So when I first became a cop, and I'll try to make this story short, I loved it. I thought that if something happened to me and I couldn't be a cop, I might as well be dead. That was what I was born to do, So I would bring my portable radio home with me and set it on the counter and listen to the calls and stuff. And I'd be thinking on my days off, man, just 2 more days, I get to go back. And 25 years later, things changed a little bit, but I always loved the tactical aspects of policing. So I was able to do a lot of things during my career that I was able to sort of parlay into a second career. And so now I get to do all the things I love about law enforcement without doing the things that I didn't like as much. So
yeah, 25 years is a good pull. That's a very experienced police officer. I've worked extensively through my career with specifically tactical teams and law enforcement, and I know the grind you guys go through. It's crazy because they always would thank us for our service, and to me, my perspective is like we couldn't do our job overseas if our head wasn't in the game, and the reason our head wasn't in the game because law enforcement at home was protecting our families. So it was a one team, one fight thing.
Yeah, I love that about your podcast, brother, and about you that you're so pro law enforcement. And it does get to be a grind. 2020 was a weird time, on the heels of the George Floyd thing, coronavirus and everything. And it kind of felt like the world was against us. We knew in our hearts that wasn't the case because the vast majority of people are pro law enforcement, right? But the ones we deal with on a regular basis in the media, man, it was a really rough time. Of my entire career, that was kind of a low point. And I think not just for me, but for law enforcement in general. I think talking to my buddies who are still on the job, we're kind of working past that now, and it's kind of more back to business as usual. But without getting too far off topic, 2020 kind of sparked like what we call depolicing, which nobody wants, right? The criminals want it, but that's not good for anybody. But cops were so afraid to do anything because the second guessing, the Monday morning quarterbacking, which, that's not supposed to happen, but that absolutely does happen. So a lot of times cops are afraid of doing something because they don't want to be on the 11 o'clock news if they make a small tactical error, for instance, or whatever. And if things don't go right, the cop is the bad guy, so it's rough.
No, it's terrible. And one of the things you said sparked something with me is started studying police officer involved shootings quite a bit because it concerns me how many police officers get shot a year. The two things that I don't think are spoken about enough in America is how many police officers get shot a year and veteran suicide. And actually police officer suicide is right behind it.
Yeah.
But police officer shootings, the one thing that really shocked me was, especially with body cam footage and all the, evidence you had, was how many police officers you could tell that were instinctively worried about pulling their firearm to save the day because of the repercussion versus having the training to it's time to draw and fire.
100%, brother. So what that depolicing and what that media constant barrage of painting the cops as the bad guys, what that does is it makes cops hesitate. And when you hesitate, you're even further behind the eight ball. So policing is by nature a reactive thing. Now we want to be proactive and go out and hunt criminals and everything. But when you get down to it, when you're interacting with a criminal, you don't know what he's going to do. So you have to be prepared to respond to whatever it is he's going to do. And as you well know, it's easier to de-escalate. In other words, it's easier to go up to a car that you just stopped thinking this guy's going to try to shoot me. And then he doesn't, right? Then if you walk up thinking, oh, it's almost the end of my shift, I got to write a couple tickets. I'm going to walk up and write this guy a ticket. And he decides in his mind, he knows what he's going to do, but you don't. You walk up there, he pulls a gun on you. It's real hard to go from that, Barney Fife type cop to, oh shit, now this is a situation where I got exactly. So it's easier to scale it down, but there's such an emphasis on de-escalation. And it frustrates me because cops are freaking masters at de-escalation. If not, by the time a cop had 5 years on, he would have had multiple shootings because there's so many situations where you could shoot someone, but that's never the goal. You don't want that to happen. So we're masters at de-escalation. But now, like especially in the academies, the young guys that come onto the force, they are so ingrained to de-escalate that they place themselves at a tremendous disadvantage. They think that retreat, maintain distance, plead with the suspect is the answer. And I didn't say this, but this is very profound. I don't know who said this, but if you're not careful as a cop, you can de-escalate yourself into a shooting. In other words, if you had taken action sooner, and maybe that involves striking the suspect, maybe that involves taking the suspect to the ground, everybody wins, even the suspect, because it happens quick, it's over, and you have control. When you don't do that, you're letting the suspect dictate what happens, and then you could find yourself on your back, and suddenly now you're drawing your pistol and trying to shoot this guy off you, where it could have been handled with a much lower level of force had you been aggressive sooner, right? But you also, as a cop, have to be able to turn it off. In other words, you can't let your emotions control what you're doing. Like, you hit the suspect or you shoot the suspect, whatever the case is, as much as it takes, but no more. So you have to have yourself kind of on a leash. You have to be able to have that aggressiveness. You have to be able to pull that back as well.
So you said something that goes across the spectrum of both military and police work. There is not a professional military unit, especially in the special operations community, that plans for a target where they're going to let the enemy dictate the outcome. You use all the principles, violence of action, mass, speed, everything that we use to dictate how that target goes down. Now, shit happens that you don't plan for, and that's where you react, and that's training. I think it's the exact same, and you just said it for law enforcement. You need to control that suspect, dictate the terms, and de-escalate when you have it under control.
Exactly.
And I think, we just lost, Godspeed to these guys. We just lost 2 Virginia Beach police officers. And to me, again, with my mind, 2 police officers that are armed and a suspect gets to kill them both. And it was horrific. They were executed. That somehow, to me, without even reading it, and I did dive into it, without even reading it, it tells me at some point in time there was control lost. And it's unfortunate because Everybody wants everybody to come home at the end of the night. That's not, these guys signed up to be policemen, but not to be executed by a fucking criminal.
Yes.
So I think what you're saying is huge. Does it stem from, I mean, is it the modern culture, man? Is it training? Is it oversight by government, or is it all of it?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with how heavily scrutinized cops are these days. So I was very heavily involved in training at our police department. I was the lead defensive tactics instructor, lead firearms instructor. When I promoted to sergeant, I became the defensive tactics supervisor. So I taught taser, less lethal munitions, firearms, anything, even tactical driving, which my wife thinks is funny because I'm not the best driver. But so I used to tell the guys, as long as you do everything right in good faith, and even if you make a mistake, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Toward the end of my career, after 2020, I couldn't in good conscience say that anymore, because you started being evaluated on the outcome. And as a cop, you don't control the outcome. You can only act reasonably. You can do the best you can based on your level of training. And now I would expect more from a guy who's got 15, 20 years on, some SWAT training and everything else. That guy, I'm going to hold to a higher standard than a brand new cop right out of the academy, right? Because that guy doesn't have the knowledge base that the more experienced officer does. But no matter how experienced you are, an outcome-based critique is very scary. It's dangerous because you don't control ultimately what happens. You only control what you do, right? You can do everything right and the situation can still go to shit. No matter how skilled you are, you can still be killed. And that's a scary thing, but there's a lot of things within your control that you can do, right? You can have the right training. You can have the proper mindset. Those types of things will help you. Make sure that your equipment is in good working order. Clean your gun once in a while. We used to say wear a vest, but if you're a cop and you don't wear a vest nowadays, and I don't care if you're an administrator or in whatever capacity you're functioning at, if you're wearing a uniform and you're not wearing a vest, you're freaking crazy. I mean, because that uniform is a target to some people, and they don't care that you are a lieutenant or a captain or a chief. They see the uniform and that might be their trigger, and they're gonna come after you. So knowing that, you always have to be prepared. So it's kind of a holistic thing.
No, and you're right, and I agree with that. And you look at there was a couple in New York recently. There's been some nationwide. But I mean, basically executions of police officers that were not responding to a call, that were sitting idle and just walked up on, and it's horrible, because that you're not switched on. Then you're pulled over, you're having a freaking coffee or something, and that is something that's society there. But I tell you, this is just me, and this is where I put a lot of blame. You mentioned 2020 and all the things that went on with that. The biggest thing that I saw with the anti-police was absolutely the liberal media. I don't know of any 10 people out there that don't like police officers. But if you watch the news, you would think 99 out of 100 people do, because all they did was search nationwide, in the how many police officers are. I mean, like New York has like 48,000 in uniform, and every day something happens. Well, they would find the one bad thing that happened and not the 947 good things that happened and put that on the news.
Yeah.
So, and then the whole, not even getting into the woke things and stuff, but it's when you have people actively campaigning to defund the police, I'm like, do you like read history? Are you like even smart? Because if you don't have policing, you have chaos.
And those people now, they are realizing the error of their ways. And many of those cities who were at the forefront of the defund the police are now saying, oh, well, okay, maybe we do need to fund the police a little bit. I mean, it doesn't take long to go without law and order until you miss it.
Yeah. And think about it too. So you go through that defund the police, you rip the heart out of career police officers to decide it's time to do my second career. And a lot of police departments now, what I'm seeing is not only the undermanned, they have a department that's allowed 1,000 sworn and they're sitting at 700 and can't get the right bodies in. But the 700 they have all have like 400 of them have like less than 4 years because of how many senior guys decided enough.
It's tough, man, because defund the police is the absolute last thing you want if you want better cops. If you want better cops, You need to fund the police more, because right now in this society that we're in, if a guy is squared away and could do a lot of different jobs, why would he go into law enforcement? You know, be a fireman, do some other things where you're not going to be as heavily scrutinized. You're not going to be hated. And I say that, I know the vast majority of people are pro law enforcement, but as a cop, those aren't typically the people you're dealing with. You're dealing with the same few shitheads over and over and over. And even good people that you deal with, you're typically dealing with them kind of on their worst day, or at least on a bad day. Even something as mundane as stopping someone and writing them a ticket. Nobody likes that. You know what I mean? So you're not often interacting with people at their best. You're interacting with people at their worst. So it's a challenge for sure. And that becomes the problem too. So when you defund the police, then you have people that don't want to be cops. And then you have a pool to select from of applicants that's not nearly as good as what it should be. So when I became a cop in 1997, it was uber competitive. So I remember going to take the written test for the Phoenix Police Department. And of course, they're hiring a lot of people too, right? It's a big department. So when I went there to take the written test, I look around, there's hundreds of people in this room with me, like shoulder to shoulder taking this test. And I'm like, wow, at least this will be good experience, you know? And ultimately I ended up getting hired. But the bottom line is it was super competitive. And it wasn't just the written test. I mean, there's a psychological evaluation, there's medical, there's physical testing. There is, what am I forgetting? Polygraph examinations and all that stuff. So it was very competitive to do. But now, since nobody wants to put themselves in that situation to be a cop and to be so heavily scrutinized and to make potentially less money, and also the retirement isn't nearly as good in a lot of places now as it is. It's kind of a tiered system. So the guy that gets hired today doesn't have near as good of a retirement as I have, having started, you know, in the 90s. So all of that means that you're getting less desirable people because you're lowering your standards. And you know, based on your military experience, lowering the standards is never the solution.
It's never the solution. You know, and not to paint a completely horrible picture, you're exactly right, because that's going on with the military too. But the one thing that there is great that still exists is both law enforcement and military is a family tradition in a lot of families. So you still are getting a lot of rock stars that generationally were police officers, generationally are military, generationally are firefighters, and they get in there and what do they become? They become the superstars.
And they want to do it for the right reasons.
That's right.
They're not just, it's not just a job, that's their calling.
And I still think there's people out there that it's their calling. I meet one of the cool things about being with this brand is I'm still connected. And you meet a lot of the tactical guys that are out there. And to me, it's one of those things that I got it. Some guys just want to be a patrol officer, but it seems to me like when I meet the guys in the specialty units, they're the guys that really want to do the job. Whether it's gang units, whether it's SWAT, you know, there's so many different specialties out there, but you meet them and you're like, they're all in. Mm-hmm. They're still everything you imagine, and they're all in. And then it's just like, to me, how I used to look at soldiers in the military that never tried out for certain things. I'm like, don't you want to be the best?
Yeah.
Don't you want to continue to move up? But it's a cultural thing. One of the other things that you mentioned, the whole defund the police thing and where that got active, that's actually one of the trigger points that had me leave the government and accept a job with Born Primitive. The founders here, both Bear and Mal, are extremely pro-military, pro-first responder, pro-police. And where I was not attracted to coming to an apparel brand, the ethos of this brand I was attracted to. So I was like, well, if I'm allowed to create tactical in the vision I want, I can take that and run with it. And they've allowed me to do that. And that's why we're sitting here today. But I think the ethos of businesses is something that needs to be talked about too, because there are companies and businesses out there that actively got involved in the defund the police. And it's funny, as a military guy, we stopped wearing their brands.
Yeah.
We refused to wear their brands. I remember tossing a certain brand of sneakers away.
Yeah.
And saying no more.
Brother, growing up, I mean, I'm 52, you're about that age, and
a little older.
we used to love Nike stuff. We used to wear that all the time. I mean, it was the way I looked at it as a kid, it's an American brand, but yeah, a lot of stuff that happens and some of the people that they chose to support, it makes you frustrated, and it makes you want to spend your money somewhere else for sure.
It does. And I'm a big believer in role models. And I have a very hard time with about 90% of athletes because today's culture of not all, notice I left 10% out. There's some amazing ones, but they're about the money, the branding, and the image. And they go where the flow of the media is.
Yes.
And I don't support that one bit. So when I meet athletes that are all in for the military and law enforcement, I actually start following them. I actually start enjoying watching them fight, play football, whatever they're going to do. And I actually love the sports that stay completely the fuck out of it. There's one sport, hockey.
Yeah.
Which is also the best live sport ever, especially playoff hockey.
Brother, it's
amazing. But you notice that during all this shit that went on, hockey was never involved.
Yeah.
They stood for the anthem and they played hockey.
I'll tell you, one of the most frustrating things for me, brother, because in 2020, I wanted an escape from the day-to-day constant media barrage of how bad cops were. And like the world was turned upside down to where now the bad guy is the good guy and the cops are the bad guy. It's like, what the hell is going on? And so I love baseball. I love to watch baseball, and it's kind of my escape, man. I'm a huge San Francisco Giants fan, having grown up in the Bay Area. And I just, that's something that I enjoy. I like that there's 162 games because, man, it's like almost with you on a daily basis for a lot of the year. But even in baseball, you started having, Black Lives Matter stuff, on the mounds and all this stuff. And I'm like, please, like there is literally no escape from this crap.
Just leave the politics out of it. Play ball.
Yes.
Play ball.
Yes, absolutely.
Like just play ball and let it go. You don't see on a special forces fucking helmet any of that shit.
Yes.
They do the mission. That's what you're there for. Do the mission. I think the issue I had was when you have like the NFL or owners that allow that. I'll give you an example just with me personally. I was born in New England, but I grew up in South Florida. I used to follow another team and they became semi-anti-military and police. And I got exposed to the New England Patriots. And this goes back to mid 2000s, probably like 05, 06. And I saw that they absolutely, their name, the Patriots, were who they were. The way they supported law enforcement, the way they supported the military. We actually were doing training in their stadium and things like that. And I became a Patriots fan because of their support for military and law. They'd have law enforcement night and the stadium was full with them and just all these things that went on. But you started to pay attention. And then when all this shit hit in the NFL, nobody had a thing on a helmet. Nobody was kneeling at the national anthem. I'm like, this is my fucking team.
Yes.
Because they are white noising it out and they're playing football. Some other teams did that too. They're not the only team that did that. But then some teams, as a team united front, basically shit on my flag and took a knee. And to these days, I can't even. Those teams to me are fucking dead.
Yeah, the most frustrating thing is seeing teams hands up, don't shoot, all that stuff. That's an absolutely false narrative that never happened, and it's been proven that never happened. But yet, no one takes the time to research that incident. They just take for truth what they see, well, yeah, the cop shouldn't have shot this guy because his hands were up. Well, if that were the case, they're absolutely right. But guess what? That's not how it freaking happened.
Right. Well, we all know that a 27-minute situation, the media plays the 9 seconds of the suspect getting 100%, put down. 100%. You never see the buildup. You never see, everything that took to get there. Sure, watching a canine strike or, guys get forcibly put to the ground is violent. But if you witness the 17 minutes before that, where they try to use non-lethal measures, talk them down, everything there was, and finally it gets to a point where it's a safety issue for either the officers involved or the public, and they have to take action.
Yes, absolutely correct.
Yeah. I don't know what the answer is, because society is not getting less violent. That's for sure.
No, it's not. It's frustrating, but like you said, fortunately, we still do have those cops doing the job for the right reasons. And you know what? What my dad taught me is you can do the best you can with what you have, with the information you have at the time, with the ability that you have. And if you do that, the way I look at it is, man, even if I end up in prison, that's so be it. Like, I'm going to do the best I can in the situation I'm in. I'm smart enough and experienced enough to be able to articulate why I did what I did. Could I make mistakes? Absolutely. Did I make mistakes? A hell of a lot of mistakes. It's funny when you look back at some of the dumb shit I did at the beginning of my career because I just didn't know any better. Sometimes it was luck that got me by. And people don't want to admit that. People want to, as long as the situation goes okay and they go home at the end of their shift, some people like to think they did everything right. But rarely is it the case that we did everything right. So what I always like to do, even if a situation went okay, is what could I have done better? And there's a lot of times looking back, the only reason I didn't get shot, stabbed, whatever, is because of luck. That guy wasn't that committed, because I put myself in a lot of bad situations early in my career because I just didn't know better. And with law enforcement, there's a learning curve, man. And you need a little bit of God or someone looking out for you. And you always want to minimize the role that luck plays. And as you get more experienced and more competent, you can really minimize how much luck is involved. But there's oftentimes an element of luck involved.
Right.
You said something earlier that really resonated with me. It's like when I was a field training officer for a long time, so I would train cops with absolutely no experience right out of the academy. And you can't say, okay, well, this week we're going to focus on report writing. Next week we'll focus on officer safety, because you don't have that luxury. You don't know. You got to take what the situation gives you. And so to that, what I would do when I have a guy write reports out in the field, right, on his computer, is back up where there's a brick wall or something behind you. And you may be typing, but every few seconds, look up, make sure
what's going on.
Just because you're in your car and you're writing doesn't mean you're not a target, right? So even when you're writing a ticket, you're behind your car so that you can use your car as cover if you need to. Now, cars aren't the greatest cover, but it's a hell of a lot better than not using anything as cover, right? And when you're writing that ticket, don't set your ticket book on your car and really concentrate on having perfect penmanship. Who gives a shit? Keep it up here like this and write your ticket so that you can monitor what's going on. Those types of things are critically important, because it's not typically the SWAT entry that's the most dangerous for cops. The most dangerous for cops is, like you mentioned, we get ambushed, or we walk up on a car thinking, this guy just ran a stop sign. However, that guy maybe just robbed a bank or something else. Let me tell you one quick story, and I don't want to tell too many war stories with you, because I'll definitely lose that battle. You have a lot better stories than I got.
Actually, these are good for people to hear.
But so one of the most tragic things that I experienced as a cop was a call, and I'll be brief as I can on this, but it's a welfare check. Go check the welfare of this family. The relatives hadn't heard from them in a while. And so the first officers on scene go there. They find an unsecured window. So they go in the window. Absolute tragedy. They find two young girls, I think 7 and 9, that had been killed inside the house. And their mother was also killed. And the husband and the father and stepfather to one of the girls had done it. And so at the time, I was one of my collateral duties was as a crime scene videographer. So they call me in, and I know what I'm going into. I know it's going to suck, right? Because there's little kids that they're dead. And but I had filmed a lot of things up to then. I had filmed homicide scenes. I had filmed several suicides and all that stuff. But as I'm using the camera to pan across this girl, my knees got weak, man. I had a daughter the same age, and it was just like, I mean, that hit me. That hit me harder than you even really realize it does, But looking back now, because we like to think, okay, yeah, shake it off, it's part of the job, but you can't. That's never a normal thing. It becomes more normal, but that'll mess you up, man. That kind of stuff, it messes you up.
Oh yeah, I had a dear buddy, retired as a Special Forces Sergeant Major, much older than all of us. And he didn't come in the military until he came in on an age waiver, and he came in at like 31 and went straight into Special Forces. He was a Miami homicide detective that was so legendary in the field that people would call him nationally, "Hey, I've got this tough problem. Can I send you a file?" And Dick solved a lot of cases. But you know why he left being a homicide cop? Exactly what you're talking about. After like his 294th one of seeing something like that, he just lost it.
Yeah.
And decided to go do something else. So I can only imagine, I attribute that every single first responder, police officer, and military person that has served, specifically military people who have served in combat, have some form of PTSD. And to me, it's, at least my opinion is, it's not the fucking charges going off around you. That is neurologically fucking you up.
Mm-hmm.
What it is it's what you visualize and what you see. And for me in my community, I hate to be, this way, but it's not about seeing the enemy. That's everybody's programmed to do that. It's about fucking losing your brothers. And that is what has wrecked me, is how many guys you've lost on your left and right, whatever, in a flight. I never gave a fuck about seeing the enemy. So to you as a police officer, seeing the innocence is the exact same thing, right?
And I kind of I derailed my own train there, but going back to that, the point I was going to make originally was, so imagine a cop stops a dude for running a stop sign, or he has a taillight out or whatever, and it's that dude who just killed his whole family, and he went on to another location and it started a fire and killed himself. So this dude just killed his family. He's going right now to a location to kill himself. And now you stop him because he rolled through a stop sign, and you walk up there fat, dumb, and happy. And guess what? Now he's going to kill you. We say in law enforcement, if a guy is suicidal, he's homicidal. Now that may not always be the case, but that's what we have to assume. If this guy is of the mindset that he'll take his own life, we have to assume he would also take our life.
That's actually a really good saying there. I never thought about that before.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, because we actually have quite a few listeners now. So two things I'd like to ask you. I mean, the rubber hits the road with the patrol officers and the sergeant. So to new patrol officers, what would you say to them? And then to sergeants that are experienced guys in what you would experience, what would you say to them both?
Yeah. So for the new officers, you have to, so there's a lot of emphasis on production, and that has to be the case, because no matter what job you do, there has to be some way to measure performance, right? And no matter what job you do, you're getting paid to perform. As a young cop, I think that you can become so, statistical performance can become so important to you that you gloss over other things like officer safety. Like instead of covering your partner on a call, you what we call preempt, and you go stop a car before that, or you do something else, because at the end of the month, when the statistical sheets are on the boss's desk, you want your name to be at the top. I'm not saying don't be productive, because that's absolutely part of your job, is to arrest people and to cite people and that stuff. That's part of the job. But don't let that skew what the real purpose of law enforcement is, which is to safeguard the citizens that you're supposed to protect. That's number one, and to protect your fellow officers and yourself. So don't let statistical performance be your number one priority. That would be what I would tell the young cops. And also listen to people who are older. You don't know everything as a young cop, and just try to do the best you can while maintaining safety and doing the right thing for the right reasons. So there's some cops that are at the top of that stat sheet, but what they do is they arrest everybody for everything. And just because someone violates the law doesn't necessarily mean they should go to jail, right? As a cop, you are supposed to be able to reason through things and use common sense, good judgment, and discretion to decide. And I don't mean you're going to say, well, this dude is of this color, so no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying in that situation, based on the circumstances, not based on personal biases or anything, but based on the circumstances, do what's right. Don't worry if you're number one or number two in statistical performance. Just do what's right. Now, for the sergeants, and I promoted later in my career, some people that promote very early, it's a challenge, because the officers don't view that new sergeant necessarily as a leader or as a mentor. They view him as a peer. And so a lot of times a new sergeant wants his guys to like him, so he's not hard on them, or he's not, he doesn't supervise them to the level that they need to be supervised. And that creates a whole big problem where now the officers realize that their boss is a pushover, so they're going to do whatever they want, puts the boss in bad situations and everything else. For me, since I was so active in all the training aspects of the police department, I was viewed, I think, as kind of a leader even before I was officially a leader. So I didn't really have that problem. Plus, I had a lot of age on these dudes who are new. Maybe they're 25. I was 48 or whatever when I promoted. So that was helpful too. But I think as a sergeant, you have to. It's a tough job because you're the middleman. So you have to be in some ways a representative and kind of the mouthpiece for the chief to try to sell his policies or whatever to the troops who may not agree with it. You may not agree with it, but I think just being open and honest is very helpful. So I'm not the chief, I'm the sergeant, right? So I have to do the things that the chief wants, but I also am not a kiss ass. I'm not a sellout. I worry about my guys. And as a supervisor, if you put your guys first, they know that, man, and they're going to do whatever they can for you. I know you've had bosses, and I have too, that I would walk over freaking hot coals for them barefoot if they just asked me to. And I don't want to fail. It's not because I'm afraid I'm going to get in trouble or lose my job. I don't want to let this guy down because I respect this guy so much that I'd rather get fired than to disappoint him.
You're exactly right. The 40 years of government service and almost all of it in the National Mission Force, and it's the no-fail mission. You do not fail the mission no matter what the cost. But every charismatic leader that I would follow blindly, and I tried to do this myself in a leadership position for the last 20 years, was my fucking team first, because that will get the mission done. And it's funny. I have a saying here at Born Primitive, and it took me a while to have this come out of my mouth to accept what I'm doing now. But I close my weekly closeout meeting every week with this. Hey guys, go have a good weekend, because we are not saving American lives or protecting the flag. We're making apparel. In other words, I realize what the mission is here. And my mission first is to my team as a leader and a mentor, which I cannot tell. My number one message to everybody in the world, if you're an experienced guy and you're not passing that knowledge on and being a mentor, you're failing. You are failing. And that's what I try to do here, because I am taking the same thing that made me a success in the military here. And they're getting it. They're like, we hire people as coordinators, want to move them up to manager, to senior manager, to director. Well, some people will only ever go to one level. That's where they're at, their ability to lead and stuff. But you should always be training them for the next level. We used to say in the military, the speed of rank is the speed of 7.62. You could be in a leadership position with one round. Again, we're making apparel here, but somebody leaves, has a baby, next person up. So I don't care what career field you're in. If you put your people first, and you don't have to compromise your integrity or the mission of your business or your unit to do that, you just safeguard them and you get to know them. Like, if you don't know how many family members, whether they're married, whether they have kids of your team, I don't care if you're leading 20 people, you're not a good leader.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And as an instructor, that's always been my passion. Is I want, sometimes to a detriment, to where I have a limited amount of time, and I try to give the person I'm training all this knowledge. It's like I overload them, and I'm learning as I become more experienced. Don't give them all that information at one time. Make it digestible, and that's part of being a good instructor. But one of the things, Bruno, that I am comforted by is I feel in my heart that I took the training at my police department from one level to another level over the course of my career, and made the training more realistic. Fought for better training and all that. And at the same time, I feel that the guys who are coming up after me are going to do the same thing. In other words, they're going to take it to the next level, because these dudes are training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu all the time. They're younger, they're fit, they're motivated. Whereas the last part of my career, the last few years, I was running my business and stuff. So I took a step back a little bit. I was at every defensive tactics session, every firearm session forever. And it was hard for me to step back and let these guys, because now I'm the supervisor, right? But I was running the show when I was a sergeant, and the supervisor was only there to help me if I needed help. And when I first got promoted, I still felt like I got to be the lead instructor in this. And then it took me a little while to realize, no, dude, you don't. You just have to be there for that instructor.
Trust
if
your
he needs
people.
you, exactly.
Trust your
Your people. And that's one of the things when you look at an instructor or a supervisor, rather, who you really admire and respect. It's the guy who, like you said, is going to develop his personnel and who's going to have your back, but he's not going to sit there and micromanage it. It's not your job as a supervisor to do that, one. And two, you're depriving this guy who's coming up the opportunity that you had to develop. And that's not right.
Yeah. So something for leaders out there, if you're not formally sitting and counseling your people, you're failing. And again, this may be something from a military culture, but it works in business. It works everywhere. You should sit down with your people at least quarterly. If, I prefer quarterly, not an annual review when they're up for a bonus or a raise. That's too late. And you should work on their pros and cons. And you should not just tell them what they're not doing right, but help them fix that. And mentor them. And oh, by the way, if you're not leading by example, none of this works. Nothing works if you're not that guy out front leading. But the best thing to do is just to continue to mentor people and show them how to do things. And then once they get it, leave them the fuck alone. Do not over supervise. Let them grow. And the best thing you can do, like I just promoted somebody to being a new manager. I gave her my vision. I gave her my left and right boundaries. And when I see her running a meeting, I'm so fucking proud of her. It's not even funny because she is growing every day because she's allowed to grow. If I'm going to sit there and cut her off in every meeting and tell her how to do things, she's not going to be an effective leader. Let them lead.
Yeah.
The
sergeant that I respected the least in my whole career is when I was new and, we'd be on traffic stop and ask for a cover unit or something. And so this sergeant would respond sometimes, hey, I'll cover you. And he would go there. But when I'm asking for a cover unit, it's because I want a cover unit. But this dude would sit in his car. So he was there with you, but he never got out of his car. And he's taking notes. So what he's doing is he's evaluating my performance instead of being there for my safety to help me out with this. And it's just like, he was terrible, man. And he's the person I respected the least of all the sergeants I had. He eventually ended up getting fired for some kind of like workman's comp fraud thing or something. But it's like, I don't feel sorry for you, dude. You weren't cut out for this anyway.
There's this great thing in the world, and I believe in it. It's called karma, right?
Yes.
So it came in there.
Absolutely.
So one of the things you said, I mean, you obviously got to a point in your career where you were so heavily embedded in every aspect of training. Is that how you formed your business?
Yeah. I mean, it sort of was. So when going back a little bit, I was a lifelong martial artist, right? So growing up in high school and stuff, I never thought I would do anything but be a martial arts instructor. And somewhere along the way, I realized, man, that's, they don't have benefits. There's and my buddy's dad was a cop. And so I figured, that's kind of similar. And so that's eventually how I went into law enforcement. But I've always had a passion for training and mainly for the arrest and control type stuff. So very early in my career, I was drawn to that. And I became the first day of my defensive tactics instructor school was 9/11.
Wow.
So I remember at the police department before going to that school, I see all this stuff on TV, and I'm sure that changed your life just like it changed everybody's life. But it's like, that's a weird thing, man, that was my first day of this school. But so I go to the school and I was a black belt at the time, I was maybe 20s, late 20s. But I go to the school and it's very technique based. So there's all these huge pieces of paper along the room that have very small writing of all these techniques. And even as a black belt at the time, I could barely recall, much less be able to execute these techniques in the heat of the moment. And I'm like, this is not the way to learn, dude. Technique-based stuff is no way to learn because, you learn 15 different ways to block someone trying to punch you in the face. And then someone's trying to punch you in the face and your brain is trying to figure out
which of the 15 to use.
Technique 14C or 15A. And it's like, dude, how about a technique that you can do where you would kind of shield yourself against a whole barrage of different types of ways that someone could punch you? That's what you want to do. So it's always the principle-based approach is what I believed in. And so I just really wanted to be involved to make cops more safe. And it's funny because I'm very heavily involved in shooting these days. And so as a young cop, I was a pretty good shot. Like I was, always toward the top of the class or whatever, but I wasn't really passionate about it. It was just something that I did, but my passion was the arrest and control hands-on stuff. But I ended up, I was a training and recruitment officer for our department for a year. And at that time, the lieutenant asked me to go to firearms instructor school because when we bring on new guys, when they qualify, they didn't want to have to take a firearms instructor off patrol. And I was already not on patrol because I was a training and recruitment officer. So I went to this firearms instructor school and sort of fell in love with it. And then I started writing for a web portal, law enforcement web portal called officer.com. And I was their defensive tactics columnist for several years. And so I went on a writers conference for that. That was mainly for gun writers. And there I met someone who's now, his name's Eric Poole. He's the editor of Guns and Ammo, who I've written for ever since this, which was in 2008. And we hit it off and I started writing for him. And then I've been heavily involved with firearm stuff. I've been writing for the gun magazine since 2008. And that's led to some gun related television shows on the Outdoor Channel and Sportsman Channel and just all that stuff. But my first love has always been martial arts. And what I do with my company is I sort of combine those two things. My goal is to integrate being able to have like an empty-handed approach and integrating your pistol, right? So that's something that there's a lot of guys that can fight a lot better than me. There's a lot of guys that can shoot a lot better than me. But I don't know that there's that many guys that can integrate those two disciplines as well as I can, because that's just what I've focused on for so long. So
honestly, it's a great transition.
Yeah,
you're escalating.
But you know what? The whole world has also come to that conclusion as well. In other words, like when I first started, you had the defensive tactics guys who were the martial arts guys, and you had the firearms guys, and they taught different stances. You'd go there and learn one thing, and then you'd go to the firearms training and learn something totally contrary to that. And so now the cops are getting a lot better training, a lot more realistic training. And I think everybody is realizing that a fight is a fight, and what starts out as an empty hand fight could go to weapons. And just because you shoot somebody, at this distance, if we were to be shot with a handgun, as big as you are, if I shot you with a handgun from here, I'm still going to fight you. It's not going to make you, evaporate when a round hits you. You're still going to be fighting this dude, which means,
especially if they're on something.
Hey man, exactly. And you gotta have a weapon retention, a way to retain your pistol. And that's something that's not emphasized nearly enough. Freaking the most flippant response to that you hear a lot from cops is, if someone grabs my gun, I'll just shoot him. No, you won't, bro. Because they're probably not going to just grab your gun and stand right in front of the muzzle, right? They're going to get the muzzle offline. Now they're punching you. Are you ready for that? How can you retain your gun then? And also, after a round goes off, and that round may even hit him, it's not going to stop him immediately, chances are. And then you're firing a round, God knows where, potentially endangering other people. And you know as well as I do, if even a weak hold on a slide after a round goes off,
it's open. That's it.
You're done. You're gonna have to tap and rack before that gun can even fire. So don't be flippant. Don't say I'll just shoot a guy off if he grabs your gun. Have some ways to get his hand off your gun, and that's important. That's part of being prepared.
If people are listening, who's your primary customer? Is it police agencies, or is it public, or how about?
These days it's mostly training private citizens.
Okay.
I'm going at the end of this month, so here in a week or two, to train law enforcement. That's going to be actually a red dot transition course. So they're using iron sights now. So I'm going to train their instructors to train their troops on how to use red dots, which I think that's great technology. That's absolutely helpful, especially when you got, today, brother, when you got eyes like me, and it hit me all at once, right? So I'm always testing guns. And if the gun has over a 4-inch barrel, we test for accuracy at 25 yards. So I'm at 25 yards and I have the gun brace there, and I'm looking, it's at an indoor range. And this is maybe 3 years ago. And for some reason, like, the sights are not coming into focus. So I have my readers, right? I put my glasses on, and now the sights are crystal clear.
But the target is.
But all I see is a blur. So I'm like, what in the hell?
What am I doing?
The bottom line is now, the solution for me is a red dot, because I can see the target crystal clear, because I have great far vision. Right. I just can't see anything up close.
Yeah, so, it's funny, in all our home defense guns, we've always had like a Crimson Trace laser or something like that. I like lasers for a couple reasons. You can also use them for direction. Hey, you fucking go over there. You go over there. They're very visual, but I'm a red dot guy. And this morning at the range, we were teaching 2 of our female employees how to transition to red dots. So it is a transition. People have to pick up that sight a little bit different, but I think once you get them on it, holy shit. And it's funny too with vision. We say red dot, but there are some people with vision that prefer a green dot.
Yes.
That their eyes are more acute to it.
And another thing too, Bruno, is if you have an astigmatism, a red dot may not be, it's not the answer for everybody, right? But for me, it absolutely is. But you bring up a great point about lasers, and lasers are similar to red dots in that they put everything on the same focal plane. So you're not having to align sights and everything like that. But a laser gives you a couple different other things that are cool, which are, you don't have to have your head behind the gun. So you could conceivably be behind cover and you can see the laser on the target. Whereas a red dot or irons, you gotta have your head there. So that's one advantage. Another thing too is I've seen this a lot with a taser, because our tasers had a red dot that they point at someone. You put that red dot on their chest, and sometimes you start gaining compliance.
You're right, and that's the answer to me is compliance and control. No, I think that especially, I'm going to be 60 in August, and my vision for some crazy reason is not getting better. But I'm an optics guy now, where iron sights, I used to be able to shoot rifles, pistols, everything iron sight really good. Exact same problem you have. Do I want to see the sights? Do I want to see the target? Yeah. The red dot with, different things you can put in front of them, magnifiers and shit like that too.
Yeah.
Game changer.
It's so universal. Yeah. I have glasses that I had specially made for doing my gun tests, where the right eye, which is my dominant eye, is corrected for seeing things close, and my left lens is uncorrected. So those kind of work for doing a gun test. But if I walked around with those, I'd be running into shit. I can't. It's a depth perception thing. It's not something I would wear all the time.
So I have bifocals, but it's crazy. The only thing I need the reader for is a computer, my cell phone, or an iron sight close up. Everything else is the other half. Mm-hmm. So I'm able, in all my shooting glasses, because I am a red dot guy, able to use the non-readers. And fortunately, we're actually partnered with Gators, and all our guys, me, Aaron Snyder, Bear, we all have prescription Gators. Yeah. And they're ballistic, and they're a wrap, so I can skydive. I can do whatever I want with them, but they work for me.
Gators are great, man. I don't have a prescription pair, but I've worn those, and they're some of the best glasses.
They're good. The reason I swear by them, obviously, because I've worn them for years overseas, which is my proof of concept. But I do like a metal frame. Mm-hmm. Don't leave a metal frame sunglass on your dashboard in Arizona. Yeah, you'll have a tattoo.
Oh man,
But I do like a metal frame because I want the durability and I want the wrap closer to my eyes. Because if I'm riding an exposed vehicle, I am freaking skydiving, I am in a boat, they don't come off.
Yes,
they stay on me. And then so many people buy eyewear that is not ballistic rated. And I can tell you some horror stories about guys losing eyes, even in simunition fights. So, I'm a big fan of them, and they give us clears that are scripted as well too for when you're in the house, whatever. But no, so you got your business up and running. How do people get a hold of you if they want to be trained?
Yeah, they could go to. So my company is WARTAC. That's what it's been for a long time. But
does that stand for?
Originally we were going to focus on like weapon retention and counter weapon tactics. So originally it was weapon acquisition and retention tactics.
I was thinking warrior tactics. Okay.
Shortened to WARTAC.
Got it.
But over the years, we kind of dropped that. We started teaching a lot of different stuff. And so WARTAC just became the name of the system. But in retirement, I started to dabble a little bit in expert witness testimony and some other things, doing some subject matter expert stuff for some police organizations. And WARTAC is maybe a little aggressive sounding for that. So my business now is called Nance Training and Consulting, but I still call what I teach the system, if you will. Even I don't know if it's a system, but what I teach, I still call WARTAC. Okay. So yeah, but people can go to richnance.com or nancetc.com or wartac.com, and it will drive them to the same place where they can see the different stuff I'm doing.
Yeah, you can also, like when I was looking at his stuff, I introduced him as Rich Nance, but if you Google Richard Nance, you'll get a really nice bio on his background, and you can pick it up from there too. And it's good for me because, again, we had not worked together, but when I looked at his resume, I was like, okay, I've got a very seasoned veteran here. It's going to be a fun conversation. So you're teaching that. You're done with police work. What about your book?
Yeah, the book's actually.
Well, why didn't you bring me a copy? What the hell?
Brother, I'll send you a copy. No, the book came out, I think in 2016. So it's been out for a while. But what the book is kind of a distillation of what I focus on, which is combining empty hand skills with close quarter shooting. And that's something that I think there's a lot of interest in it because there's not a lot of people doing it. There's maybe like a half a dozen people doing that. And I think it's a missing link. So I teach, the course I teach most often is a 2-day course called Close Quarter Pistol. And we focus on in-hand weapon retention. So in other words, your gun is out and someone's grabbed it. Well, how have they grabbed it? Well, any number of ways they could have. You could have shot them and then they grabbed it, right? Or you could have drawn it in close quarters and they grab it. You could be clearing your house and you aren't as careful going around the corners as you should be, and he grabs it. The bottom line is, if they grab it, do you have a response? And if you don't, then you probably need some training in that. So the book focuses on that. It focuses on shooting in close quarters. And I'm a big advocate of the way I was taught close quarter shooting was kind of like a speed rock, right? Where you draw and kind of lean back and do this sort of thing. And I tell people, don't speed rock, make the guy you're fighting speed rock. Because if he's on his heels and he's leaning back like this, you're going to run his ass over. So don't let that be you. A speed rock is just something I don't teach, because what I teach is in extreme close quarters, you're going to have your offhand in the fight. You can't just come here. Like at 7 yards, 10 yards, you can come here and get your nice draw stroke and presentation. But if I'm fighting you in close quarters and I go like this, you're going to pin my hand to my chest and knock my nose, through the back of my head while I'm trying to shoot you. So you have to use this offhand, either offensively to drive the guy back, or defensively to protect yourself as you're drawing your pistol. So when you are drawing your pistol, you want your pistol to be oriented downward, because your offhand is going to be up here high somewhere. So if you do a speed rock and your hand is out here like this,
you shoot your own hand.
Probably going to shoot your own hand. I mean, there's a lot to it. I'm not trying to teach the whole concept here, but basically it's in close quarters, bringing your elbow way up so that your muzzle is oriented downward. And you're going to probably get a shot around the pelvis or somewhere. And people say, oh, why are you shooting him in the pelvis? Because that's the opportunity that presents itself. From there, maybe I'll shove him off, get a good two-handed sighted fire shot or whatever the case is. But it's just a way to be able to create distance. Also using strikes. So if someone grabs your pistol when it's in the holster, you got to lock that down. You got to get your strong side back. And then what? There's a lot of techniques I learned, peeling his hand off. Look at those arms, brother. Am I going to peel your hand off the gun?
Right.
There's no way. So what I teach is you lock that in and you use your offhand to strike this dude, whether it's an elbow, a palm, whatever the case is. If you have a fixed blade knife, that becomes an option. If you have a flashlight or even an asp that's collapsed on your duty belt, if you're a cop, take that and hit him with it. Well, what's the disarm? The disarm is to hit him with it as many times as it takes for him to let go. Now, if someone's really trying to get your gun out, they probably have both hands on it and they're probably close to you. They can't protect their head. So you hit them until they let go. You got one hand keeping it in place and you hit them until they let go.
I love it. You said two things there. One, you used two words that I love, is creating distance. I think that in a close fight, that especially if you're like going against a gorilla like me, you got to create distance. You got to get that distance and then you can win the fight. The other thing that I really like is and this is hard because some people are not natured this way, but the escalation of violence. You are now in a fight for your life. And you have to understand that right now, and that if you don't fight for your life, you are losing. That's the one thing I always tell women is that, if that gun comes out and you're not going to shoot it, it is probably going to be used against you.
Yes, that's why you never threaten.
Yeah.
It's never, well, I'm not that good at shooting, but I have a gun in my house and I'll just use it to threaten. No, he's going to take that gun and shove it, where,
Yeah, I used to tell my wife, like, I hate to be this guy, but we go through drills at home, like no shit, like how to barricade, but I've always told her, I said, I don't care if the door gets kicked in and they're saying police. If you don't see blue lights and cruisers in the front yard, you're fucking switched on. If it's not, honey, it's me, you're switched on. And I told her, if somebody ever kicks a door in and they're in the house, the first thing I want you to do is, first of all, don't shoot my dog, but I want you to put a round on the floor. Because now what you need to know is anybody that's proceeding towards you in the house, they're coming to kill you.
Yep.
If you have put a round out, you are changing a mindset.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And she's like, got it. And I just think that you have to escalate quickly, because if they're there and you put a round out or you do something to escalate and they continue, it's game on.
And Bruno, you're absolutely right. Another thing that's counterintuitive, but it's very important that you learn, is counter weapon tactics. In other words, I'm not talking about John Wick and doing some fancy gun disarm or whatever, right? But there is a distance where closing makes more sense than creating distance. You have to close because you're in kind of that no man's land. If someone draws a pistol on you and they hold a pistol to your head in extreme close quarters, there's some hesitation on their part and you need to take advantage of that. So if they only wanted to kill you and that was their only intent, they would do it from 5 or 7 yards where there's not a damn thing you could do about it other than maybe try to dive for cover or whatever. But if they're close to you, they're trying to intimidate you. They're trying to get something from you and you could use that to your advantage. They're allowing you to act and they are forcing themselves to be reactive to that. So people think it's unrealistic that you can, for instance, with a gun to your head, redirect it and get offline before they can press the trigger. It's absolutely possible to do that. Is it dangerous? It's absolutely, hell yeah, it's dangerous.
What's the other choice?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And here's another thing too. If you think compliance is going to keep you safe, then by all means comply. Give the dude your wallet or do whatever you want. Do whatever he's asking you to do. But you draw the line somewhere. If he's telling you to get on your knees or he's taking you somewhere to another location, I always tell people don't go to crime scene too. Like if someone's trying to take you from one location to another, they're taking you to some place that's more desolate where people aren't going to hear you.
Good things aren't happening.
Yeah. So make your stand right there. And when you make your stand, people aren't expecting you to do this shit, right? If they're holding a gun at your face, they're expecting, oh God. So when you do that, you kind of, you have an option there. You have an opportunity. And even if you don't disarm it, once you have that there, you grab a hold of it. And I don't want to get too much into trying to teach because I'm sitting in a chair and can't demonstrate well, but anytime you're fighting over anything, and I know you know this based on your training and everything, the closer that object you're fighting for is to your body, the more leverage and the easier it's going to be for you to retain that or to take that from them. And counter weapon tactics doesn't mean disarming some dude with a knife. It means surviving that initial attack. And if you're armed, creating distance, drawing your pistol, that type of thing. So I'm not teaching weapon disarms as much as a way to buy time, create an opportunity to separate and get to your pistol. So that's a different mentality.
No, it's a smart mentality. And that's, you said there's less than 10 people doing it. I'll tell you that as much experience as you have in it, that it's a niche and it's something that's not taught. It's taught in the special operations unit, but where else is it taught?
Yeah.
So,
and a lot of people, most of my students are proficient shooters, but when they take this class, they're like, wow, like we didn't realize that this was a gap in our training. So most of them really like it because that's not something that's typically taught to shooters. It's that, hey, I have a gun. This is the solution to my problem. It's either a deadly force situation or it's not. But there's a lot of situations that are in between nothing and deadly force. And that's why it's important to, whether you're a shooter or not, to have some empty hand skills because chances are that's what's going to be called for. I mean,
I look at it like take a professional boxer that's used to being in a ring and the rules and put him in a guy like with me with a bar fight.
Yeah.
Where every fucking thing in that bar is now a weapon.
Yes.
Yeah. And there is no such thing as not fighting dirty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I get it. I love it. How many people are involved in doing this? I mean, how much are you having to put on other instructors?
Yeah, it's mainly a one-man show. I have a buddy, David Halford, who started the business with me, and he's a lifelong martial artist, but he's not a gun guy. So a lot of the gun stuff that I do doesn't involve him, but it's usually me. And the training, to be honest with you, has taken kind of a back seat lately because of time commitments with writing. I'm writing about 65 articles a year for Guns and Ammo magazine, Handguns magazine, and several other magazines that owned by the same publishing company. And then I'm currently doing 3 television shows and a podcast. And I'm trying to be
not busy at all. Not busy. I'm glad I got you here. How's that?
I know you can relate, brother. But I'm trying to. I just got married in December, and I'm trying. Thank you, brother. I'm trying to spend a little bit of time at home and trying to retire a little bit as well. But I'm passionate about what I'm doing, so it's not a grind like some people might think. But I remember my wife told me, "Babe, as long as you're here 1 week a month," and I'm like, that's not fair. How about I'm gone 1 week? That's what I'm working towards. Maybe be gone 1 or 2
I've
weeks.
been working towards that for 39 years.
But not all the time. Yeah, exactly. I'm preaching the choir with you, brother, as far as deployments and all that.
So tell everybody how they can find the book.
Yeah, the book is available through, I think it's called Blue 360 Media. And that's...
is there an ebook format as well?
There is, yeah.
Okay.
And it used to be called Loose Leaf Law. That was the publishing company, but they were taken over by Blue 360 Media. And what it is it's kind of a niche publishing company, mainly for law enforcement, but there's some stuff that's applicable for private citizens and stuff too. But yeah, the book is available there. It's pretty cool. That book, it did really well. I mean, I'm not on the New York Times bestseller list, brother, but as far as for that company, for a while, that was their best-selling book for a year.
Do you have a YouTube channel?
And not so much. I'm terrible. I'm always doing cool stuff like this, but I'm terrible about social media.
Everybody is telling me
trying to get better at it. But
YouTube is the next level.
Yeah.
So we just created the Born Primitive Tactical YouTube channel. Matter of fact, one of the things that's crazy, and I think it's because of the guests I've had so far, is so in the 7 episodes we've aired so far, the podcast, we've had an astronomical YouTube following, and typically podcasts are like Spotify, Apple, but people are actually watching. I think it's the studio's cool,
Yeah.
and the guests we're having are cool.
Yeah.
But YouTube is something on my outdoor side with Aaron Snyder that we're heavily investing in, and we're getting ready to start tech tips on the tactical side. We've been doing it on the outdoor side. I definitely would love to get you, like we're going to do things. My biggest thing is situational awareness. Before you ever get into the close fight, there is seeing the fight before it happens.
100%.
So we're going to start doing a lot of stuff on that. And we're really going to focus on the women because they're easy targets.
Yes.
So we're gonna do some stuff on that and everything. But I'd love to get to a point once we have got to where you come into play to get with you on that. But you should look at YouTube, and I'll tell you why. More people surf YouTube than they do Instagram.
Yeah.
Especially for technical videos.
Yeah. Well, I'd be honored to do that, brother. Yeah, that's really cool. And you hit on something too, as far as the awareness, situational awareness. Everyone focuses on things like, I want to have a sub 1 second draw from concealment and get an A-zone hit at 7 yards. That's a good goal to have. I'm not knocking that. But if you're situationally aware, maybe you can get by with a 1.5 second draw, or maybe you can get by with a covert draw. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not dismissing the importance of being able to draw quickly, but don't put all your eggs in that basket. Pay attention to your surroundings, and you're going to give yourself an advantage to where maybe you don't have to be that, proficient or that ninja-like.
It is so funny you say that. I had Dan Horner on here as a guest, and
that was a great podcast.
And to me, like, if you want the definitive 3-gun world champion, because of his mindset, that's the difference between him. Is there's a lot of guys that can shoot, but the way he attacks it and the way he describes it is. But he even talked about you can be a world champion with a 1.5 second draw. It's everything what you're doing after the draw.
Yeah.
And it brought that point up, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. If you get the gun out fast and you're not hitting what you need to be hitting, and I just love the way he focuses on training. I mean, he brought home the point of, if you go to the range just to shoot, you're failing. Because what are you accounting yourself for? How do you get better? How do you and I cannot tell you how many times I've taken people to the range and said, let's just put some rounds down range.
Yep.
And he brought that up to me, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. We need to get back to the system we had in the military, where it's a grind, where you're competing against the guys on the left and right. And there is a measuring system of how well did I do today and what am I going to improve on? And really the only fucking thing I care about in that day of shooting is all the rounds I blew, not all the ones I hit.
That's the way to do it, brother.
So,
you know what Dan said that really resonated with me? It was his analogy about keeping the balloons up.
Right.
It's like, and dude, that is so true.
Right.
And if you think about it, like, everybody who's the best in the world at whatever it is, other things in their life are not getting that attention, because you're not going to be the best at anything without going all in and just kind of putting all your eggs in that basket, so to speak. But you got to keep other things afloat too, family life and all that other stuff. So that was a brilliant analogy. And I think what we all kind of strive for is maybe somewhere in between. We want to be the best we can, but we still want to be a good husband and a good father. Being a good shooter is important, but it's not more important than family and stuff like that. So it's about finding that balance.
No, and it's something I'll tell you right now, I'm the biggest one guilty of it. I find professional SWAT guys, professional soft military operators, world level athletes get so focused on their mission and their discipline that the families become second. I had Derek Wolf on a podcast, and I asked him a question. I asked him, I'm like, hey, when you won the Super Bowl, tell me about what it was like when you hit the playoffs in that playoff run. And he said something that resonated to me. He was like, nothing else existed. Nothing else existed.
Single-minded focus.
Single-minded focus. And I was like, you just described a combat deployment to me. I didn't need to talk to anybody at home. I didn't need to do anything but focus on going out the door. And it was like, okay, two completely different things, but the same mindset.
Trip, man.
So kind of crazy. So what else do you have going on? What else can you tell us about?
So recently, I think probably about the time you started this podcast, I started a podcast called Taking Aim, which is a podcast. It's an aim point podcast. And it's cool to do stuff and to be involved with stuff you really believe in. And I was a huge aim point fan before this opportunity presented itself. So I was very excited. Awesome. And like you, man, I get to have some really cool guests on there. Hopefully you'll come on there, brother. That would be great.
I love it. I'm a fan of Aimpoint, been using them forever. So
it's a remote podcast, which is cool. I really like being here with you. This is really neat, but just for me, schedule wise and stuff, the way it sort of worked out was remote. But it's really cool. You know, I have a really nice studio, like you do. And it's just neat to talk to people with all different backgrounds.
Yeah.
It's definitely not a podcast that's all focused on red dots. If it was, I think there'd be like 10 people that listen to it, probably twice. So no, we've had Mark Graney on there, who's a New York Times bestselling author who developed the Gray Man series, which is really cool. We've had Craig Boddington on there, who's a very well-known hunter who's hunted in Africa like over 100 times, and a lot of tactical guys and stuff that we have on there. So it's a good variety of stuff. We just had on former UFC fighter Michelle, the karate hottie, Watterson Gomez. So she was really cool to talk to. She's kind of a newer shooter, but a little badass. I mean, she would fight at 105 pounds was her weight, her fighting weight. So it's really neat. I really love to be able to interact with people with all different backgrounds.
I've got, I tell you what, I've got something for you. If you take a look at if you go to the bornprimitive.tactical.com website and you go to the ambassadors tab, look at my lineup of ambassadors. I've got some people. I'll give you one. She's a lion, Janeda Cosson. She is the 2-time reigning elite national tactical games champion. And in her off life when she's not competing, which is a grind, she is essentially a shooting and a CrossFit coach. But this woman is amazing. And if you haven't looked hard at the tactical games and the discipline of it, it's insane. You could be a world-class CrossFit athlete, which is very elite. If you can't shoot, you ain't winning. And you could be a world-class shooter. And if you ain't fit, you ain't winning.
It's and a really
get the
cool
two
concept.
Of those together.
Yeah.
I think what the tactical games is doing with that whole crew, and we actually sponsor a spinoff of it, if you will. 2 of them, actually. One's called the Patriot Games, and one is called Sawmill Showdown. And we're the lead sponsors for both of those. But those disciplines, I think, is the next competitive sport. I think it's the future of I won't say something like the UFC, but it's going to be big because you can't just show up and win. Yeah. You have to have both disciplines. But people like that, they would be awesome for you to talk to because it's such a unique discipline. And then, of course, I've got some of the most world-class operators and SWAT guys that are my kind of people. That's one thing I believe is I'm building this brand on both the tactical and the outdoor side. My ambassador crew, I'm not big. I don't give a fuck how big your Instagram following is. I want to know who the person is. Yeah. I want to know what you're doing, and you better be legit. And if you're our ethos and our mindset, I just signed a guy, Kurt Fennell. He's a Green Beret tactical games athlete guy. He won the 2023 or 4 tactical division. Now he's competing in elite. He already won a regional this year. This guy is a machine. But here's a Green Beret that's competing in the tactical games. I signed him solely because of his ethos, because of who he was as a man. And I think he has like 3,000 Instagram followers. I don't care. Yeah. I don't care. I signed him for who he is. Now, at the end of the year, because we're partnered up, take a look at his Instagram.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna grow him as a brand. That's the deal.
That's perfect.
Is I'm gonna grow this man as a brand because he's our kind of guy.
Because that benefits everybody.
It does.
It's like
it does. And I treat my ambassadors like family. A lot of brands, it's about a paycheck. It's about wear my t-shirt. That's not it with us. And that's the reason even our collaborating businesses, like we're getting ready to wrap up here and I got something special for you, but the people we work with, I am approached now because of the content we do and what we're doing and our ethos by so many brands. I'm like, if you're not online with us, we're not doing business with you.
Yeah.
And we can be selective that way, which I enjoy doing. So,
well, it doesn't take a lot of investigative skills to realize you guys are pro law enforcement and pro military, which is huge. I mean, that resonates in everything that you guys do. And I know that's by design.
it is. And I will say it started long before I got here, but our owners and, everybody has said, run with the torch, and I'm running with the torch. And I think it starts with your home team. We just sponsored the Virginia Beach shooting team for the police department. I think that, to me, law enforcement is near and dear, and I want to make sure that everybody knows this brand stands behind them. And of course, our owner's military, I'm military. We have so many military spouses and people in here that's kind of a known. So, what else do you got to say for everybody?
Man, I don't have too many words of wisdom, brother. I think I pretty much gave you everything I have. Man.
You've given us a lot, and I'm going to make you a deal. You send me a copy of your book, I'll come on your podcast.
That's a great deal, brother. I'm all about that. Yeah.
Yeah, because when I come on the podcast, I will have read it, and I'll have more questions, so it'll be perfect. All right, so I got two small things for you. We work with, so I don't know if you've ever heard of Montana Knife Company.
Oh, heck yeah.
Josh Smith is an amazing human being. I have known him less than a year. I met him at Western Hunt. We sat down and talked. We were being courted by like 3 or 4 different knife brands. And after having Josh on the podcast and talking to Josh, I'm like, I'm going with this guy. So they sponsor us. I love their knives. They're just now into the tactical world. They just released a sear knife. I want to say it's sold out in 8 minutes. Their blades are amazing.
Yeah, they have a tremendous reputation.
Yeah, they do. But here's one of their knives. I hope you enjoy it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate it.
And then coming from the military and law enforcement community, you can't do this without a coin. So
Thank you very much, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. We're going to close out here. Rich Nance, a great resume. You heard about the book. You heard about the business. I'm a big fan. Read the book, and we're going to talk about the book when I'm on your podcast.
For sure, man.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Hot Wash by Born Primitive Tactical. Don't forget to like, subscribe, or follow us at Born Primitive Tactical. I'll see you next time.